harvest management plan can help with making decisions about when to harvest fruit, allocate labour, and improve fruit quality and storage outcomes. Part of this plan may include the use of plant growth regulators to help manage harvest maturity. This video featuring Hannah James from AgroFresh provides important information about using PGRs as a tool to help harvest fruit at the ideal maturity.
So plant growth regulators, they're a great tool to have and to understand in the orchard, and they're going to help you manipulate your crop to get your fruit off at the ideal harvest maturity. Generally speaking, in terms of a direct relationship from the plant growth regulator to storage quality or storage outturn, there's not that much there. So plant growth regulator is really functioning on the physiology of the fruit when it's attached to the tree and how it's respiring, how it's developing, how it's maturing. So what it's going to help you do is get your fruit off at the ideal maturity, which then has a benefit for your storage quality. But in terms of the plant growth regulator itself impacting storability, there's sort of a disconnect there. There's the maturity piece fits right in the middle. So the plant growth regulator helps you manage maturity, but maturity is your key for your storability and your better outturn at the end. So the benefits of using Harvista in the orchard for apples, there's sort of two main categories. One is on fruit quality. So when we talk about fruit quality and the benefits of using Harvista, there's a couple of different ways that Harvista affects. So if we look at what the fundamental approach is with Harvista, it's all about ethylene and managing ethylene in the fruit. And so ethylene is involved with all of the fruit ripening processes. And all of those fruit ripening processes have implications for quality of the fruit going through into storage. So an application of Harvista in terms of fruit quality, we can slow starch degradation, so we can have earlier maturity fruit which will have longer storability. We can keep background color a little bit greener, which is a good maturity quality benefit for the fruit. Keep titratable acidity higher, which gives a better flavor profile. Maintain firmness in the orchard and going through into storage. And then aside from quality, we also have harvest management as the other sort of set of benefits that Harvista can provide for fruit in the orchard. And harvest management falls into a few different places. One of those is consolidation of picks. So where we have multi-pick varieties, so like your galas and pink ladies, really anything with blush now, where you might be going through the orchard 2, 3 or 4 times to get that fruit off in ideal quality. What Harvista can do if you apply before the harvest window is consolidate that number of picks down. So it's going to slow down harvest maturity, but it's also going to keep that fruit on the tree more consistent. And when you have more consistent fruit on the tree, you have more consistent fruit in the bin, then you have more consistent fruit going into storage, which is just easier to handle through the supply chain. One of the challenges with fruit and maturity and harvest and quality is you sort of need to be thinking of quality from 2 different directions. So ideally, we have a marketing plan for that fruit for the next 12 months of what our intentions are for that fruit, and then we work backwards to the orchard to then try and manage our blocks and our varieties and our maturities to fit that marketing plan. But that's not necessarily realistic, and we also know that we have to manage our orchard and our blocks and our varieties and maturities and pickers and weather and all the other factors that come into play to then try and best suit that to our marketing plan. So we're sort of trying to move from both directions and meet hopefully somewhere in the middle where we have fruit that's of the ideal quality. So if you're managing your maturities and you know you're trying to fit certain marketing plans for that fruit, you have an estimation of how much long-term fruit you want, how much mid-term fruit you want, and try and harvest to that appropriately, or use all the tools in your toolbox to try and fit that fruit as best you can in the orchard to that marketing plan. Ideally, you want to have the most flexibility, because if you have all your fruit of ideal quality, ideal maturity for long-term storage, that will give you the most flexibility then in storage if you want to move that fruit forward in time or backward in time, that you have the flexibility to do that. Typically what I would suggest is that plant growth regulators will help you manage your harvest maturity. And so we know harvest maturity is one of the key factors, where if we're harvesting fruit over mature, those fruit are going to be a lot more predisposed to internal browning disorders going into storage. So in terms of the best way to time your harvester of application in terms of what you're looking for in the fruit. So we've done a lot of looking at this, and really at the end of the day we use starch as a good sort of surrogate for your maturity of fruit. So everyone should already be very familiar with how to do a starch measurement in fruit and how starch correlates to physiological maturity of fruit as well as storability. So starch is a good indication of the maturity of the fruit. And what we tend to see is that the earlier in that maturity piece, based on a starch measurement, the more extension of harvest maturity you'll get with a Harvista application. I tend to think of it as kind of a mirror. If you apply Harvista 15 days before harvest, you should get around about 15 days of extension. If you apply Harvista about 5 days, you'll get about 5 days of extension. So the more mature that fruit is, the less extension of harvest window you're going to get. Plant growth regulators absolutely play a place for how a grower can manage their crop to try and get the most value out of their pickers and how they can move their pickers through that orchard. So generally plant growth regulators can extend your harvest window in both directions. So you can use plant growth regulators to move your crop forward in terms of getting maturity to come in faster. And then you can also use plant growth regulators to slow down your crop. The best thing to do to manage harvest management with plant growth regulators is to have a plan before it's harvest season. As you get closer to harvest, there's going to be less opportunity to move your harvest window, just because as that fruit ripens, it's much harder to start to slow it back down again. If you're new to using plant growth regulators in your orchard, there's a lot more variables when we're talking about the orchard than when we're talking about post-harvest. So there's recommendations for the use of all plant growth regulators on varieties in different orchard systems, but that really needs to be tailored to your orchard and your circumstance, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all in terms of use this rate at this time. It really does vary on what your varieties are and what you're trying to achieve, because everyone's using these products to achieve different things to suit their logistics. We don't all manage our orchards in the same way. So when you're using plant growth regulators and using them in different combinations and with different varieties, and even seasonal effects will be different as well, the best thing you can do is to talk to people, choose your agronomist, your crop advisor, get advice on what people are doing, what's working, and how things work in your specific conditions, because this will vary across orchards. There isn't a one-size-fits-all, so talk to the people who have the experience and get some advice.
At the end of the day, we're growing fruit for consumers and want to ensure that the best piece of fruit is delivered to them every time they choose to eat it, so that they continue to purchase Australian-grown apples and pears. It's important to remember that there are a variety of tools available when planning for harvest, and PGRs can be part of that toolkit. Testing fruit maturity is central to making sure fruit is picked at the optimum time and will help with storage and post-harvest planning decisions. If you're ever unsure about harvest management planning or the application of PGRs, speak to your crop advisor to ensure you're applying the product correctly and achieving the best possible quality for your fruit.